growing up, my parents were American.
Yes.
They moved to Israel shortly after I was born. My wife, by the way, the same thing. Her parents came when she was 4 months old. But she grew up in a suburb of Jerusalem called Efrat. It's in Gush Etzion, and over there are many Anglos. So when her friends came over, she always spoke in English at home and with her friends. By me, it was very much the opposite. My whole circle of close friends, I only spoke in Hebrew all the time with my friends, with everybody, and throughout the entire growing up in school and high school and army. And when my wife and I got married, we spoke first in Hebrew in the beginning to each other, and then after she had our first baby, it was roughly the same time I was becoming a tour guide. I was going through the tour guiding course and already working as a practicing tour guide. And she said, "Hey, why don't we switch to English?" And I started speaking in English at home and at work. And that's the way it's been for about 10 years that I find myself between 80 and 95% of the time talking only in English.
Mm-hmm.
I started about 10 years ago, I'd say every single day talking only in English. And also, I just sound like I speak like a very good English. I actually, unfortunately, read most of what I read in Hebrew,
Mm-hmm.
and I have a very lousy vocabulary, meaning I might sound like English is my mother tongue, but
Mm-hmm.
if you would talk to me and say complex words in English, you would realize that it only sounds that way. It's like an illusion. I actually don't have such a good English, unfortunately.
Okay, okay. That's interesting. So
I basically talk English like a 5-year-old kid. I'll say
well,
fancy
you do
words.
sound like a very smart 5-year-old kid.
Thank you.
No problem. So maybe how old are you actually?
Well, I'm 34 years old.
All right.
Um, yeah.
Okay. So how did you came to be a tour guide?
Wow, you really want to hear the answer? It's not such a nice one. um, after the army, many people in Israel look for a very easy job that there's always a very big demand in, and usually pays a lot of money, and that's accompanying tours.
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain it for people in Germany what that means. When you in Israel, every organized group, by the way, every supermarket, every pharmacy, every post office, every mall, every kindergarten has a guard outside. Unfortunately, we've had years of terrorism here in Israel, so because the threats were always big, and there's lots of guards always looking for work, and I mean there's lots of guards needed. And every single organized group usually has a armed guard, meaning part of the demands for them to get permission from like this, uh, like hiking or touring, I'd call it headquarters, sort of, is a demand of an armed guard in every group of people. So after the army, I worked for a few months as a guard, accompanying groups, meaning they had a tour guide, they had a driver, they had their counselors, and they had me as a guard. I would join groups for a day, and I happened to see one tour guide after another, after another, after another, that I really did not like. Meaning, so that's the bad answer here is that I thought 95% of tour guides were awful.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, I'm being conservative. I'm saying 95. It's probably 99.996. Of tour guides that were very informative. Just made their guiding like a documentary, style day, and so they would lose 95% of the group. Meaning, I'd see a tour guide talking basically to himself or to one more participant who just, would listen to him just because he feels sorry for him, because everybody doesn't. And I pretty much came home and told my wife, or basically to myself, decided that I want to try to become a tour guide and try to do things differently, try to make my guiding interesting, try to make it an experience and not just informative. Meaning most people don't want the tour guide because they want information. Most people want a experience. That's sort of why I became a tour guide, to fight something that I thought was not good and try to make it better.
Okay, so to what school does one go to become a tour guide actually?
Well, in Israel, I don't remember if it's 7 or 8, but there's 8 different centers to become a tour guide. You can do a course, let's say, in the university in Tel Aviv, and there's a course in the University of Haifa, and there's a course in university all the way up north called Tel Hai, and there's a university, I think, in Beersheba that you can become a tour guide through. They do a tour guiding course, and they have to follow demands of the Ministry of Tourism, and they set up, meaning you have to go for at least 70 days of touring. So it might vary. They want to go to 70, they want to go to 73, but basically they're all gonna go on a number of tours. They're all gonna have, like, I don't know how many hours, 500 hours of in-class sitting. They're both gonna have the same exam at the end, meaning they're all gonna come to Jerusalem. Even if you live up north, for a big, very, few-hour test. Basically, it takes all day at the end. A unified test for everybody, and that's how it works. So I did in a tour college in Jerusalem, just because in Jerusalem then there were 2 options. Today there are also 2, but a different 2. The one I did closed down a few years ago. Competition, but different organization opened the course. But that's how one does. And in Israel, there's about 7,000 licensed tour guides. That's a lot.
Yeah, it sounds like a lot. So everyone takes the same test, so they are also the same questions?
Everyone takes the same tests. I won't lie, the course is super fun. Anywhere between a third and a half of people on the tour guiding courses are people who do not intend to actually practice and work as tour guides.
Okay.
Meaning, many people do the course, let's say they're 50 years old and their spouse wants to buy them a gift, their husband or their wife.
Yeah.
So the people who do the course are a lot of times people who actually want to work in it, let's say me, or people who don't want to work in it, meaning people who just do it for the fun, because it's a lot of fun learning about Israel.
It's just like
from
a
everything. If it's
history lesson.
exactly, well, it's history and geology and religion.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what's fun about it is that it's like learning the interesting aspects of every topic. You don't study anything in depth where it becomes boring. You study just the interesting topics of every single thing. Meaning you don't learn how geology works now. Let's learn the physics behind it. You learn a very shallow level of geology and a very interesting level of religion and a very interesting level of biblical archaeology and a very interesting level of Bible and a very interesting level of Christianity and there's a lot of courses. Like, you do, it's like learning a semester. So you learn a semester of this and a semester of that and a semester of this and a semester of that. But usually the courses will be very interesting. So a lot of people do the course, not because they're intending to work in it, but just for the fun. It's if somebody has 20 or 22,000 shekel to spare, and many people do, it's just a fun 2 years spend your time. So many people do the course just for the fun. And yes, at the end they have a very hard test because there are more people who are doing the course than actually people that Ministry of Tourism want walking around, practicing as tour guides. So they have a very hard test at the end, and that's it. Tests are hard. It's usually a whole day, if I remember correctly. It has like 2 segments to it. One is like lots of multiple choice questions, which they can basically ask anything, geology, Bible, anything, Christianity, Islam, sites in Israel, random travel agent questions, like what does it mean if it says BB, which means bed and breakfast, or HB, which means half board, just basic, technical things. And then there is Second part of that question takes, I think, 2 or 3 hours. You just sit there. It's like building an itinerary. You basically, it says, let's say, you have a group of evangelical Christians coming to Israel, and you're their tour guide. You have 2 days, until one day in Tel Aviv, one day in Jerusalem. What would you do with them? You have to build an itinerary of different sites you go to, and just spill out information. As if you're talking on every bus ride, the whole bus ride, like what would you talk about? And there's obviously you're not going to do it, but in the course they want you to just spill out information.
Mm-hmm.
They learn about every mile on Israeli roads. It's nuts. And then after that, if you pass that, you're invited to a oral question where you give a presentation in front of a few people. It's very nerve wracking. And after that, they basically ask you questions either about what you guided, what you spoke to them. You spoke to them as if you're guiding them in some place in Israel, and then they ask you questions, and the questions could be anything. Like one of the questions I was asked is how many toilet stalls are there in a specific gas station in Mitzvah Ramon in Jerusalem, like in Israel. It's like those
What?
random questions they can ask
Okay.
you, like.
And how are you supposed to know that?
Well, you're supposed to remember which bathrooms are bathrooms with lots of stalls, because if you stop with a bus in a gas station that has like 20 stalls, it's a 10-15 minute stop. If you stop in a gas station that only has 2 stalls, it's going to take you an hour to stop, and you stop for
Okay.
an hour, you miss 45 minutes on your day. So you
Yeah.
should remember the ones that are big. It's crazy. You have to remember every little thing in Israel.
So did
I'll
you know
say
it? Did you
I
remember
knew
that?
it because it's a very main one.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it only has 2 stalls.
Okay. No, but it sounds like a very like a trick question, but it's a trick that you learned. Um.
Sometimes I've had friends that ask trick questions just because they were nasty. They asked, let's say, there's a pool in Jerusalem called the Shiloh Pool that for Christians is very important. It's a site mentioned in the New Testament as
Mhm.
where Jesus cured a blind man. So I had a friend that somebody asked him, what's the importance of the Shiloh Pool in Islam? And he didn't know.
Okay.
And it's very nerve wracking, and all the questions out, and there isn't any. It's just being nasty. It's just tricking you.
Okay.
And he should have said there isn't any, but he thought he
But in
figured that if he was asked,
yeah, there
then it
should
means
be.
there is.
Oh wow. Ah, that's not nice. That's weird. Okay,
I
but
agree. I agree.
have you heard? I think I read it today. That have you read the newspaper today or something?
I've read the news today, but what are you referring to?
I am
Hamas shooting 50 rockets at Israel, or
no
some
no no no
guy
no no.
coming into a
I'm
synagogue in Pittsburgh and shooting people down? Like, I don't know what you're referring to.
neither of those.
Okay.
Actually wanted to talk something completely different, but still about basically historical facts, because
Okay.
some scrolls from the Dead Sea, that it was discovered that they were fake. Have you heard about
Okay.
it? Wait,
I,
let me.
I've heard of this, but it's not something that I can. I don't know if somebody's taking them and faking them in different
No,
universities in the world, but
yeah.
clearly these things were found in hundreds of places, way more than it could be faked. Like they found over 900 different places where they found scrolls.
No, but
Um,
it was something specific. Wait, after Museum, I'm just reading for you the CNN article. The headline: After Bible Museum scandal, more American Christians suspect they bought fake Dead Sea Scrolls. Those are the ones.
oh well, look, if you find something very important,
Yeah.
when they had in the Time magazine, they asked, I don't remember how many thousands of archaeologists
Mm-hmm.
for the year 2000, after 100 years, what's the most important thing found in the past 100 years of archaeology?
Mm-hmm.
And the Dead Sea Scrolls won with a very large gap.
Oh, really?
It makes perfect sense to me that, yeah, a very large gap. It makes sense to me that many people would want to ride the success, and fake, pieces of the Dead Sea Scrolls and sell them to different museums for
Yeah.
money
Yeah.
or to private collectors. And and ride on the wave of success.
Yeah,
But
but
the fact that somebody goes and fakes pieces does not mean that the rest are fake. It just means there are bad people out there, taking advantage of of the fact that they're not fake, and some
they
people are
might
using
be,
that
yeah,
and faking
worth a
them.
lot. Yeah. I actually wanted to read you this sentence. We suspect that maybe 3 out of 10 fragments are forgeries. So not everything, but parts
Yeah,
are.
look, when
Yeah.
the editor of every newspaper is not the person that was actually writing the article. It's
Yeah.
another person who's reads an article, and an editor thinks of a way he can write it in a way that everyone's going to read. So it's nothing to do with that one article. It has to do with all media,
Mm-hmm.
all newspapers, all news items. You have to remember that the content not necessarily goes with the the headline will always be an exaggeration,
Mm-hmm.
if not even contradict what it says in the article. So I don't get excited about headlines usually too much, and I think smart people should not read headlines or take them with a grain of salt.
Well, of course, headlines are there to attract
Yeah,
attention.
make people attract attention, make more
Yeah,
people read the article.
of course. But that's why you have to read the article. So if someone
Yeah,
were to,
even the article says that the majority of Dead Sea Scroll fragments found, sold, given to collectors and museums
yeah,
are original.
yeah.
You know.
Oh well, I just wanted to question you on that. Not really in a too serious manner.
Look, the Dead Sea Scrolls themselves
Yeah.
are interesting because I split them into two. One part is very interesting for researchers, which talks about the few people living in tribal society in the Dead Sea 2,000 years ago, and it's texts that are in internal texts, like in for their tribe, to their tribe, talking about basically how God does not like anybody but them, and a day of rage or judgment will come, and the world will, all burn, and they will survive. And for Christians, this is very important because John the Baptist, the guy who baptizes Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
maybe was, you can easily assume that he was from this tribe.
Mm-hmm.
He was living by the Jordan Valley. He was baptizing people, telling people forget the corruption and materialism in Jerusalem, come live a life that's holy without those things, which is what basically very similar to what people in that tribe and the Dead Sea Scrolls we had found. So that's very similar, and many people attach and connect it to. Other parts of segments, the majority of them are just parts of the Bible. So if 3.5 million people come, and 3.5 billion people in the world today, Christians, Muslims, and Jews, come and absorb what they have from the Bible. This is the earliest copies we have. This is 22 centuries old pieces of the Bible, which, give or take a few vowels more, a few vowels less, it basically is identical to what we carry today. And it's very significant to see that this text was canonized over 22 centuries ago.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, as I understand, those texts, just in general, are one of the most important artifacts of basically that time period. So, either for believers in the religions, or oh, did we break up?
Oh, yeah, it broke up.
Okay, no problem. I hear you once again.
Okay.
So when did I stop speaking?
I didn't hear you answering me. I don't know
Okay.
when it hung up. My
Okay,
screen
sorry.
didn't light up, so.
Okay, that was interesting. I didn't hear you leave me. So basically, I was saying that no matter if someone's a believer in the religions or not, Those sea scrolls are one of the most significant artifacts of that time period. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so let's go away from your job as the topic, and I want to go back a little bit, and maybe you can tell us more about your early life in Israel.
Well, I grew up in Jerusalem.
Mm-hmm.
My mom's a doctor. She's a hematologist. My dad used to work as a fundraiser for different organizations. Most of what my dad did was volunteer work because in Israel you pay very high taxes because my mom made enough money that my dad would have to pay a lot of taxes if he were an employee. So
Mm-hmm.
he basically worked very little, and most of what he did voluntarily.
Mm-hmm.
And um, and that's it. I grew up in Jerusalem. My circle of friends is from a neighborhood called Katamon. That's pretty much the center of town. It's not one of the towns in the outskirts. It's very close to the center of town. And um, and I went to high school in Jerusalem too. My whole circle of friends was from the neighborhood. Used to hang out with them, play with them. Growing up, I became a counselor in a youth group that was established in a suburb of Jerusalem. So me and the rest of the counselors, we used to go there like every week and once in a while on a Saturday also. Play with kids and basically keep them off the street and keep them in a environment that was more um, I'll call it safe or more educational rather than on the streets. So they have a little framework to be in and be a part of. And that's it. After finishing high school, I took a gap year in what we call in Israel yeshiva, where you study different studies to deepen and connect yourself more to spirituality or more to Jewish history or more to Jewish texts. And after I ended up spending a year and a half, not just a year there. And after that, I joined the army, like every Israeli has to do by law. In Israel, army is not a suggestion; it's mandatory. So that's
So
what I
how
did.
was that? How was that? How was the army? The time in the army.
Well, I was in the army. I joined the army. The army is a very wide range of things. It's like a country inside a country, meaning there are people that are technical. There's about 170,000 soldiers in the army. Everyone always thinks that the army is like people with guns running around. That's infantry. That's about 7% of the army. 90% of the army are different people that are either collecting reconnaissance or people that are doing technical work, fixing airplanes or fixing jeeps. You have people that are in charge of food for the army. You have people that are in charge of fixing walkie-talkies or putting radio, things on jeeps. It's very wide. It's very, very wide range of things. I joined the infantry. Most of my friends, for my circle of friends, that's what we would do. And I joined a unit of paratroopers. So I served in a unit where you had to do some tryouts to get accepted into.
Mm-hmm.
So generally, all the people around me were people that basically had basic motivation. So for me, that was very good. I had a, uh, a lot of other places in the army. You have people that don't want to be there, and the army joined them, to make them join that place. I was in a unit where everyone had wanted to go to that place, meaning there was no people that were there by accident, or against their will. It was all people who made the choice they want to go there. So for me, that was very good.
Mm-hmm. So what kind of unit was it?
Basically, I'm pretty sure what I'm telling you on the phone now are things that are okay to talk about. I hope. Um, Paratroopers, by definition, uh, do very similar things to the rest of the army,
Mm-hmm.
meaning to different brigades which are not paratroopers, which are just infantry. In Israel, we call them the Golani or the Nachal or Givati brigades. There are 5 brigades of infantry in the IDF, so paratroopers is one of 5. And the only difference is that you train also to walk very long distances, meaning, I'll give you an example. If Israel wants to attack, I don't know, Lebanon tomorrow, or Lebanon attacks Israel and Israel retaliates,
Mm-hmm.
if we were to go through the Israeli border into Lebanon, the whole border is probably booby-trapped.
Mm-hmm.
While as if Israel wants to drop soldiers 60 miles north into Lebanon, then work your way south towards Israel, you will land wherever. They can't expect you. It can't be all booby trapped. It's the soft spot of their country. So it makes a lot of sense to have paratroopers in any army, have people that can penetrate an enemy area of behind enemy lines.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem is that when you do that, you don't have a chain of logistics. Meaning, I don't have a bunch of jeeps to keep giving me food or ammunition or batteries for my walkie-talkies, for my radios. So basically, if you just train to carry much heavier weights than other parts of the army, because you're there on your own the first week or two.
Mm-hmm.
So when the training, you basically train to carry all your food, all your water, all your ammunition, everything that needs to be carried, and you learn how to practice, more lightly. Meaning, for example, when I'm in reserve duty and I spend the night outside, or a few nights outside, they won't even give us sleeping bags. Just have to sleep outside like dogs. um, and a lot of my friends had knee problems or hernias from carrying way, way, way too much weight, which is what they made us carry. So it's very smart, but also is very difficult in terms of the weight and in terms of distances you walk. I mean, if you're a paratrooper, you're going to walk much longer distance. So when they're not going to drop you, if they drop you off helicopters or off boats or off airplanes, it matters less to me. What matters is that if God forbid it ever happens, they're not going to drop you off where you need to go. They're going to drop to the Arab village they want you to conquer. They're going to drop you 50 miles away where it's safe, and then you have to make 50 miles with all your things on your back.
Mm-hmm.
Walk 50 miles is not fun.
Yeah.
So that's basically where I served. I had a great time in the army. You want me to talk more about it? I'll talk more about it. But in general, I had a very good time. Like, it was a lot of fun. It was very bonding with friends.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, I was with a good circle of people. I was with motivated people in general. And yeah, there were some people I did not like, obviously. There were times that were tense.
Mm-hmm.
But for the most part, it was a lot of very very fulfilling time in my life. Very uh, just fulfilling. You bond very strongly. You're with people, the same people, 24/7, 365 for years of your life. So it makes bonds. You're talking to me now. I'm in reserve duty now with some of my friends that are with me in regular army service. I'm talking 15 years ago. And I cannot see them on a daily basis, but then I'll suddenly meet them and I'll be best friends with them. Like, I'm just you feel close.
Yeah, of course. But that sounds pretty tough. So, how long have you been there again?
How long did I spend in the army in
Yeah,
total?
yeah.
A total of 4 years.
Okay. So, have you experienced some well, how do you call it? Uh, ho- hot times in terms of war?
Thank God, never.
Oh, that's
I
great.
was in the army. I was in the army when everything was quiet around me.
Okay.
I had a lot of friends while I was in the army. I had a lot of friends in different places in the army. I was, let's say, paratrooper.
Mm-hmm.
I had friends that were from the Golani Brigade, and they were positioned by the Gaza Strip, where there was a lot of hard times there. There was a lot of, I don't like this word, action. Like,
Yeah.
I never shot a gun outside a shooting range when I was in the army, only in shooting ranges or in training.
Mm-hmm.
While as if I had friends by the Gaza Strip, which had rockets flying next to them, which here and there had to. I was in the army when we still had settlers living in in the Gaza Strip. We had a bunch of settlements living over there, and they had to shoot to keep Arabs away from the roads leading to them if they would get a little too close because it was threatening. And other friends of mine experienced a lot of what the Israeli army personnel call action. While in my personal life, yes, but and when I was in the army, I think I never experienced any action.
Okay. Well, so so how is a dynamic in such a unit? Is there um like how is the experience from a day-to-day basis?
It's the dynamic is usually very good. It depends a lot on two things, one more than the other. It usually depends on how your officers are. Meaning, if your commanders are nice people, and I'm looking for the word in English in American slang is chill.
Yeah.
If they're more calm about things, so you'll have a great time. If your commander is less chill, you'll have a harder time. So it depends a lot on your commanders. I've had some times in the beginning where my commanders were less chill,
Mm-hmm.
and I've had but the commanders change throughout the army term. They don't spend that many years there. It's not like in other armies where it's a military career and you spend years in. I've had a few different officers, lieutenants that were my lieutenants throughout my army service. I had one for training. I had one right after training. I had one later after training. I've had a few. So except for the one for basic training for the first 7 months of the army, which was very much the opposite from being chill. The majority of them were chill and were great people, and the whole atmosphere around it, changed. Meaning they were it was good. Now the atmosphere, you always have people that are going to be more hardworking than others. Meaning they're not going to come and tell you as a person, okay, you carry this and you carry that and you carry that and you carry that. They're going to put a big pile of stuff in the middle of a place, and they're going to say, okay, you guys are 30 people. This has to get to where we're going. So
Split it
this is
up.
the split up, and so yes, some people will be more hardworking, and they'll take heavier loads and or more bulky things. And some people will always, space out and find their way out.
Mm-hmm.
So the army basically, in the beginning, I was very tense about it. Then later, I became more relaxed. I figured there are always going to be people that are going to be nicer. There are always going to be people that are going to be less, and there's nothing you can do about it. Meaning, being not chilled about it is just going to cause the atmosphere to be even worse. So once I learned myself how to relax about these things, then I'd say my army service was a lot more fun.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not bad. Okay, I can hear myself in the background again. Are you wearing? No, everything's fine again. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm sitting without moving. It's probably an internet thing. I'm on a
Yeah.
random hilltop on guard duty, and there's probably low internet service here. So
No, it's okay. I just heard my voice for a second and then I was gone again. So that was the problem we had last time, but it's not a problem right now. Okay, so where wanted I go to next? Well, yeah, you so right now you are doing again a reserve. It's what it's called. So it means they take you out of your everyday life, and now you have to do some kind of guard duty, or how is it?
well, in Israel, up to the age of 40,
Yeah,
or 6 kids, you're obligated to.
yeah,
Once you have 6 kids or you're 40, you're exempt, meaning you don't have to, even though many people choose to
to do
continue
so. Uh-huh.
serving. Yeah, in my unit, I have a lot of guys there in their 40s and are still, joining. Obviously, less and less, meaning there are less guys that are 50 than guys that are 45. There are less guys that are 45 than guys that are 42. Like some people decide to pull another year or two. Usually, it goes in 3-year cycles, meaning 1 year they'll have training, 1 year they'll have a longer session of training, and 1 year they'll have a whole month. The whole month they'll usually be holding a little line of, we call it in Hebrew, litfos kav, meaning you have a specific zone of this country that you're in charge of. It could be down by the Gaza Strip, it could be down by Eilat, it could be up by the Lebanese border, it could be in the West Bank, it could be, all kinds of things. And you have a zone, you have an area that's yours, and that's it. You're in charge of it, and so and that's it. You're in charge of security there for one sec for about a month. I mean, so we're in charge now for a month. We had 4 days of basic training for everybody, meaning just to get fit, just to get equipment, just to basic training for what happens if war breaks out tomorrow, just to a refresh type of thing. And then my unit came up here to Shem. Usually the army tries very hard, and usually successfully, that let's say they're up in a place that they need 50 people at a time. If let's say 70 join, 70 showed up, so there's extra people, and what they do is they let some people home, meaning within that month, you're only going to do, let's say, 2.5 weeks or 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how usually it works, meaning they'll split it, and they'll let 20 people be at home at any given moment.
Mm-hmm.
Remember, people have university tests, people have their wives are pregnant, it's a later stage in life. If people are 35 and 40, then,
Yeah.
some people are going to be, busy with all kinds of things. So, for example, most of my platoon came on Sunday a week ago. I came a day late because I had work that was very important for me, My friends are leaving tomorrow, even though I'm continuing till Thursday, because their work is very important for them, different people have different things that make them stay a few days more, a few days less, and as long as there are 40 times at a given moment or 50 people at a given moment, then the people in my company are satisfied. So the training is always going to be 1 year. There'll be 1 or 2 years there'll be more intense training, and then the third year there'll be more chill training. But there will also be a longer period of time for people to bond, for people to get to know each other better and spend time with each other. That's basically what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So great. So how long do you still have to do this?
I have 5 more days.
Okay.
I've been now. I've the last 5 days out of a month, at which I had 8 days at home.
Okay.
Meaning I came for 5 days training, spent 8 days at home, and now I'm in the army for the rest of the month.
Okay. All right. So you said that during your service you never experienced any kind of dangerous situations.
No, only thank God, never. Only my personal life.
Okay. So what was that, if I may ask?
Last year in 2017, I was guiding a group of soldiers. So I'll just say in advance that a lot of soldiers have educational days where they go touring the country.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times the days that Israel's education system in high school is very, very good in specific things, meaning they teach you trigonometry and math and science and computers. It's very good in the sciences.
Mm-hmm.
It lacks very strongly in the humanities, in Jewish history and stuff like that, meaning an average Israeli finishes high school and might know trigonometry very well or math very well, but suddenly he gets tossed in an army scenario and he doesn't know what he's doing there, meaning he's not fighting for his individual, he's fighting, you're serving a collective, and it's going to be very hard for you if you don't know what that collective is or don't know the history of different things or what you're doing there. So I was guiding a group of Israeli soldiers on one of those education days. It happened to be soldiers that were in the army for a year or two, meaning not new trainees, but rather people that have been in the army for a longer time. An officers course. They were doing a course of teaching them how to be officers.
Mm-hmm.
And a terrorist took his truck and he saw a group of Israeli soldiers, and he pulled the wheel and knocked into us, injuring 13 soldiers, including myself, and killing four of my group that I was just about to start guiding. And I mean, if I want to say action, I mean that was pretty much the only bit of it I had. And even though I got wounded, I managed to pick up my personal handgun. I carry one on a daily basis, and I managed to run at him despite my injury and shoot him while he was trying to run over more soldiers or run over the wounded.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. So how did you? How do you? How do you? Did you experience that situation?
Look, I wasn't thinking about it while it happened. When
Did,
initially the truck had hit us, I was confused. I basically thought, like, I'm assuming like everybody else there, or like almost everybody else there, I wasn't thinking this is an act of terrorism. I was thinking that this is an accident.
mm-hmm.
Um, I I got hit by a truck. I went rolling on the grass to get all the people there. A very strong impact, obviously hurting a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I was thinking, I can't believe I'm going to be handicapped my whole life. This sucks. That's what I was thinking. I was rolling in those, I don't know, 20 feet, about 6, 7 meters. I rolled on the grass from the impact.
Mm.
I was thinking, I love my job. I can't believe I'm going to be handicapped because of a stupid car accident, and then I'll never be able to walk again. Like and it's such a strong impact, made me roll so strongly backwards on the floor that I was thinking to myself, you think it very quickly. I was thinking like I didn't think I'm ever gonna walk again. Meaning I was thinking in that half a second, this sucks, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah. But then you
Um, and
could
then
stand up.
adrenaline kicked in very quickly because I remember the impact hurting very badly,
Mm-hmm.
and I remember 2 seconds later I was in no pain. So it hurt me a few days later, meaning a day after it happened when I got out of the hospital, then I was always very cold, and I was part of my language. I had to go pee like every 5 seconds. Like adrenaline does weird things to your body. But one of I just got up. I suddenly saw that the truck driver didn't like get out of the car like you'd expect from a car accident,
Yeah.
um, but started driving reverse to run over people. And in a half a second, it clicked that this is not just a random, car crash. It's a terrorist who rammed his truck into people. And I felt that my gun was still on me. I was wearing relatively tight jeans that day, so and my gun was still on me. And I ran towards his windshield and started sort of playing hide and seek between me and the driver who was you know driving away to ditch me, meaning he pulled his wheel and pulled reverse because I stood in front of his windshield, and he tried avoiding where I was.
Mm-hmm.
Basically playing hide and seek with a terrorist in a cabin of a truck. I wasn't thinking about it. I was just doing what I think every other person would do in the same situation. If somebody's trying to kill a bunch of people and on a little tiny promenade, you also would run at him and think, okay, I mean, if you had something what to do with it, if you had a gun, you would run at him and shoot the cabin, try to stop him.
Mm-hmm. Well, at least that's what you did, and so you could stop him from doing any more harm.
I think anybody would do that. I don't think people look. I look at other terror events that happened around the same time, like a terrorist who ran people over in France and Nice or in Berlin. I think that anybody in his right mind that sees a truck ramming over people, if you have what to do with it, if you don't have a weapon on you, or if you have only pepper spray, it's useless. Just run away. Try to hide behind next to a tree or in a big step that a truck can't go down, a big concrete step. But if you have a weapon, if you have a gun, I think every person would do what I did. I mean, I don't think that what I did was anything special. I think that it's just a random thing that any civilian in my situation would do.
Well, we hopefully don't have to find that out all too often.
I don't wish that to anybody.
Yeah.
I'm just saying the situation. I mean, a lot of people come over to me and say, "Wow, you did something so heroic." I don't feel that way towards myself, and I'm not being um, I'm not being bashful or being shy now. I'm being very straightforward. I really do not think so. I
Well,
really
you.
think I did something very ordinary that I think any other person would do.
Well, I don't think that you have to feel either or, because it's just the reaction that you have. Either you have it or you don't, and I don't think people can control that kind of this fight or flight reflex. It's programmed so deep in us. I mean, maybe in the army, this kind of program gets a little well, programmed differently. So maybe the army did help you manage the situation in a, well, in a more professional way than others. But who knows how other people might react.
Most of the training I did in the army was, training for war. How to conquer fortified army positions, not not different things that had to do with how to deal with situations like that. That happened in downtown Jerusalem. It
Yeah.
didn't happen anywhere risky. It happened in a place where I've spent so many times before. It happened in the middle of downtown Jerusalem, where one of the most visited sites, especially for me as a tour guide, one of those sites. I was there with a group the week before, and I was there the week before that, and I'm there all the time. It wasn't. It's not. I wasn't. It's not like when I was in a place that was like risky or or feels risky. I was in a place in downtown Jerusalem.
Well, you basically defended your home. That was your
Whatever. I tried
instinct.
stopping.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking. I wasn't thinking my home. I was
No, no,
thinking about the people's lives.
no, but the people are part of the home. I think so.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah.
it was a, well, as you say, you were very familiar with that uh, place. So this is basically the closest I can think of how to describe the situation.
Look, I feel in Israel,
Yeah.
we feel a very strong sense of a collective, and as opposed to other states in the world sometimes that are immigration states, like America is a great example for an immigration state where people do not necessarily feel a connection to each other. In America, sometimes you'll see a person having a car crash, and other people will run away. In Israel, people feel a nation state. Germany might be the same way too, by the way. People feel very close to each other. I don't know if that's the way it is in Germany. I'm just, taking Germany as a example for a people state. In Israel, it's very noticeable,
Mm-hmm.
very strongly. It's not just an ethos we grow up on; it's a reality on a daily life. People, if tomorrow war breaks out, they call in the reserves. You could be yellow, pink, up, down, around, right or left, and you'll join. You'll leave your family behind, and you join to fight for people wherever they're in trouble. Here in Israel, if there's a war, and wherever there is a war, or whenever there is a conflict, whether it be up north in Lebanon, whether it be in the Gaza Strip or in the West Bank, people suddenly join. People feel a very strong sense of collectivehood. So yeah, like if just like if you would feel somebody attacking your immediate family members, I think every person would join to run and help his sister, brother, or mother or father if they were in trouble.
Yeah.
So in Israel, the circle is a little bit bigger, and you go and you fight other people, which are your fellow Israelis, because people feel that they're part of the same collective, part of a very big family.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, that was what basically I meant with defending
Yeah.
your home. Your, yeah. Um. So how is then, when I remember how you taught us some things about the conflict or the conflicts that Israel is in right now, um, how do you approach dealing with this, with the conflict?
What do you mean? How do I approach it? I mean,
Well, how do you, because I felt like personally that when you were talking about the conflict, it was relatively objective, because as you, even as you said right now, you were in a situation in which I think quite a lot of people would get very well, how do I describe it correctly? It
get
would
a
be,
very personal,
yeah, very
whatever,
personal
personal
about it,
aspect.
and get very bitter and very well, yeah, very angry about it, so that, well, certain approaches to the conflict wouldn't be very well approachable for that person after that kind of incident.
Look, when I was at the end of my high school, around the year 2000, um, so Israel suffered a wave of violence from Palestinian terrorists that was very strong. I'm not trying to make competition now with anybody else, but as an Israeli, it was very serious. We had a lot of Israelis that were attacked. Buses were blowing up, restaurants, cafes, pizza shops. I personally lost dozens of friends I knew personally. Some of them even very close friends. Meaning for all for just like so, but for us Israelis, it
Sorry,
always
can you
was.
say again the last two questions, the last two sentences?
I'm saying for us as Israelis, it always is and was it always had a personal connection. Meaning, even if you personally do not know somebody who was hurt in terrorism, meaning I did, but then your brother knows somebody, or it's your friend's cousin. It's always got a personal aspect to it. Now it's I look at it because it's part of my profession. I look at it more in a professional way. It's just the way I see it. Meaning, not there's no way of stopping. Uh, Diagnosis is a very important thing, and there's no way to stop. That person who carried out unfortunately the terror event I was in was a great example. There's that person who knocked his truck into us had no way of knowing that we're there before doing it, meaning it's not something he planned out. At that very moment, he was driving, a load of bags of concrete or something, building supplies, to a site he was supposed to go to. And on the way, he to go and hurt Israeli soldiers than it was, for him to get to where he was going, or I'll say more than that, for him to provide for his family and for his kids. It's not. I don't think a lot of these things are planned attacks. I think they're sporadic attacks, meaning a person did not make a decision in advance to deal with it or to carry out the attack, but rather that he, suddenly carries it out. It's much harder to protect yourself because a terrorist himself might not know in advance that he's going to carry out a terror attack. It's not like an airplane, hijacking, where it takes a lot of, you know. It's like my phone fell one side.
Yeah, no problem.
I'm sorry about that.
No problem.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. I'm saying it's not a attack like
Not
a
planned.
terrorist knows he's
Yeah.
going to attack and has a plan. Not planned. It's very sporadic. It's much harder to deal with. So I look at these things and I say, okay, what brings a man to, a man that's an ordinary person one day to carry out an act of violence? There are different ways to stop it, or there might be different ways to address it and approach it. And I look at it definitely more in a professional way rather than a personable way of what happened to me personally.
Mm-hmm. So, how often do Israelis actually in their day-to-day life talk about this conflict? Is it something that is talked about a lot, or do people try to sometimes maybe forget it and not talk about it as much as possible?
No, it's very present in Israeli life. I'll tell you more than that. It's not just present. It's very. There was a Israeli researcher who once said that the political question in Israel for many years now was a question of identity, meaning just like in America, people today have your identity. It's not a opinion argument that your opinion is X and his opinion is Y, and let's have a opinion discussion that we can enrich each other or have an argument about. It's more of an identity, meaning your identity is at your left wing or your identity is at your right wing. And in Israel, it's very present because everybody wants peace in some way, shape, or form. Nobody wants the violence to continue. And the Israeli left and the Israeli right, they're very, very, very strongly in debate about what's going to lower violence, what's going to make it not escalate as much. Meaning the question is always there and is a very strong one, very present. And in soccer matches in Jerusalem or in soccer matches in Tel Aviv, people aren't going to sing or chant, fight rich people. People do chant fight Arab people. I mean, the conflict is very, very there. It's very present.
Mm-hmm.
Also, I think that part of what makes it very present is the amount of of mixture, meaning the Israeli and Arab society within Israel, or within the West Bank, or within Arabs from the West Bank working in Israel is so large. You have 160,000 people from the West Bank crossing to work every single day in Israel, meaning it's not like it's far away from you. It's a third of the manpower in your office. It's a third of the manpower, half of the manpower in your garage or in your factory. It's the people working in the restaurant you're going to eat at. It's something you meet and see all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's very present. It's not like Germany where you might have a 10-hour car drive from one place to another. If you want to drive from Tel Aviv to the West Bank, it's a 20-minute drive and you're in. You want to fix your car there. You want to buy a cheaper carpet. You want to. Whatever you wanna do. Life is very mixed, and because my tariff is very, very clear, meaning most people that carried out, or many people that carried out terrorism in the last few years were the ordinary worker you would see in your factory, or the ordinary person you would see working in your restaurant, who lived with Israelis, with Jews his whole life, and then one day, poof, carried out a terror incident, meaning that feeling, even if people don't put it in words, is very present. People see that, or they feel, that they never know when it's going to happen. You never know when it's going to happen to you in your factory or in your block or in your office or in your restaurant. And people, even if they don't put it in words, people feel it. People do experience it very strongly.
This sounds very awful in a way, because it seems like the Jewish Israeli society basically has the problem of having I will call it, has the sense
Fear.
the sense of ev- of everyone who's of Arab descent to be a possible terrorist?
Look, I feel like Israelis feel very conflicted. I might look at it, in a more professional way than the average Israeli and explain why they feel, and I don't mind explaining to you why I think they feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
But it's enough that there's, one or two, and there have been a lot more than that, terror events where a ordinary Palestinian or Israeli Arab person goes and carries out an act of violence against people he knew, and
Mm-hmm.
people he worked with, that it makes people feel a fear. Meaning, if many, you want me to put it in fancier words? Should I do it? Should I explain to you where this comes from? I'll
Sure,
be
of
happy
course.
to.
Go ahead.
Um, Living in the West, we live a very Western society. Western society is in Germany, by the way, the same thing. It's very Western society. We live very individual lives. We have our things. We care about our family and our life, and I care about my car and my kids and my wife, and it's all about me. And 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 in Israel, by the way, as much as we're Western, we also feel a very strong we. We feel a very strong sense of collective, that you're part of a bigger family, a bigger group of people. And in the East, meaning not in the West, I mean in let's say the Arab world, or sometimes in India, in different places, or in Africa, in different tribes, life is much more a clan. Life is much more a tribe. Life is much more communal. And what so people don't put it in those words, but if I would explain to Israelis, they would nod their heads in agreement and say they feel very strongly that the collective that we are part of, which is the Jewish collective, is a conflict or war, or call whatever you want, with the Palestinian collective, with the Israeli Arab collective, which see themselves as Palestinians. They see themselves as part of the same collective of Palestinians. Meaning Israeli Arabs might have Israeli IDs and Israeli ID cards, but they feel a very strong sense that they are part of a collective. And that collective is the same family or collective as the Palestinians are. You'll see lots of Israeli Arabs, for example, that'll wave Palestinian flags, or fight Israel, or struggle with it in many ways. So people feel a very strong sense of the we and the they are at conflict. And in Israel, everybody feels that. The question is how to solve it, or how to go about it. And people have very strong feelings on left and right, how we should approach that violence, or what's the best way to make it, to lessen it, or what's the best way to solve it. They have many different approaches, and they argue very strongly about these approaches. But about the basic problem of a we and a they that are a conflict, people feel that. Now, just like I said, in the Western world, you would never attack somebody that you're personally friends with. Your personal friendship with a person would be way stronger. Your Western attitudes would be way stronger. But in the East, it's not that way. And in the Arab world, many times, we've had people that said, okay, personally, I know these people. They are personally my friends. But if right now my collective is at war with them, so my collective is what will determine my actions. And people, I just put in fancy words how I'm not saying at all that all Muslims are violent, or that all Israeli Arabs or Palestinians are violent. Not at all. I'm explaining where the ones that are violent get it from. And there's always a fear, meaning once a Jew working together with Arabs in his office, or in his factory, or in his pub, or in his bar, or anywhere, you name it, we're mingled.
Mm-hmm.
The Arab is the bus driver in my kid's school bus, and people feel that you never know when he's going to have suddenly a sense of collectivehood that's going to take over his aspiration of his personal friendships, and his collective aspirations will take over, and then acts of violence could immediately follow. And all Israelis fear that.
Mm-hmm.
Some Israelis feel like the Arabs are Western like them. That, oh, a Israeli Arab or Palestinian who's my friend would never hurt me. Therefore, people sometimes might think that the best thing to do is to make, cooperation and friendships, or widen the circles of cooperation and friendships. But many people look at it and say that's not true. You've had Arabs that worked together with Jews. We've had a week and a half ago a Arab who killed two of his colleagues working in the same factory. He came one day with a gun and shot people he knows. People who worked with him in the factory. He was a friendly man one day, and one day carried out an act of violence. So all Israelis, or a lot of Israelis, fear that, and that's what we have. We have. I can give you, unfortunately, several names of terror incidents that happened by Arabs who tried attacking Jews that they knew personally, on a personal level, worked with them, took care of them in the hospital, you name it.
All right. The problem that I see there, if you describe it like this, is that, or not the problem, the situation is that the two societies are already intertwined so much that it feels to me like as if basically the exclusion that might come up because of certain violent acts wouldn't be a good approach for the situation, because exclusion of those people who you are basically intertwined already would lead to more problems than inclusion. Because I think if someone was to decide at one point to attack someone, being excluded from those people, I think, makes it easier for more of people who, well, I will say it indiscreetly.
Want to carry out acts of violence to make them.
Yeah.
Look, if
you understand my position?
I think I understand that. Meaning a fear of if you go and you collectively attack people, it might make more people attack.
Yes.
Meaning it might widen the circle of violence.
Exactly.
I hear that. I mean, I when I hear a question like that, I feel like being devil's advocate and voicing what maybe the majority of Israelis feel, which is there's plenty of wanting to be violent on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying this is not going to widen it, make some people be violent if they weren't thinking of carrying out acts of violence. There was, but there's plenty of it. But maybe the other approach, meaning a more militaristic approach or a deterrent approach, will not widen acts of violence as much as it would lessen them. Meaning, yes, me putting a strong policing force might make some criminals upset. I'm just giving a crime example because it's easy. It might make more criminals upset about the justice systems, and maybe some more people will, carry acts of violence. But I'll have 5 more incidents like those a year, of people that'll be upset. But I'll prevent 100. So in general, I've saved 95. People in Israel, a lot of people in Israel feel like that's not what's going to stop violence. Is appeasement,
Mm-hmm.
but rather the opposite, rather enforcing it stronger or deterring more.
But isn't that what is happening? Has been happening in the last months and years anyway? Because
no, that's an illusion. I'll give you a great example. You ready?
Okay.
Hamas shot from the Gaza Strip this Friday.
Yes.
This Saturday, sorry, today, 51 rockets at Israel.
All right.
So Israel bombed, I don't know how many, a few dozen sites in the Gaza Strip. and Israel claims that they deter Hamas or react strongly.
Yeah.
And that's nonsense.
How so?
Meaning, how so?
Yeah.
Because, okay, very simple. A month ago, they shot 41 rockets, and we bombed a bunch of sites in the Gaza Strip. Okay, and then a month later, they shot 170. A week later, sorry, they shot 170 rockets. So I would say it's pretty much a fact that whatever we shot in the Gaza Strip did not deter them from shooting more. Meaning, an act of deterrence is supposed to stop the motivation from the other side. It has to be disproportionate in order for it to work. It's pointless if you're going to bomb something that doesn't hurt them badly. It's pointless. And Israel keeps doing pointless acts, meaning the acts that we're doing are not deterring. Now, I'm not saying deterrence, you're going to think that it has to be, carpet bombing Gaza or killing lots of people. There are lots of ways to deter. You could take a Arab tribe from the West Bank and move them to a village nearby. If somebody carries out an act of violence, just giving people, exiling them a few hundred yards, but that can really hurt their socially. It can hurt them very badly. You could take loudspeakers and blast Israeli folk songs at the Gaza Strip. We can fly over the Gaza Strip with airplanes and make sonic booms over it 1,000 times a night. There are lots of ways to deter and make people's lives miserable. Meaning, if last night people had to wake up in the southern part of Israel from 6 times at night or 12 times at night, they had to wake up from sirens and they didn't sleep very well. Okay, so the people of the Gaza Strip will sleep even worse, and make sonic flybys, sonic booms several times. I'm just saying there are a lot of ways to deter, but deterrent only works if it's disproportionate. That's why we keep having waves of violence happen, because people aren't deterring. We're not deterring. We're doing pointless acts. I would say, by the way, it's a fact. Give or take, between now and the next few months, I guarantee you again, I'm willing to bet $1 million on it, that whatever we did tonight in reaction to the Hamas shooting these 51 rockets did not deter them. They're going to shoot rockets again.
Okay, but the question would be then,
would deter when they shoot more rockets? Would it make the wave of violence grow? Yes, unless here, that's what we did today. Unless you're disproportionate. Deterrence only works if you want to scare people. If you're willing to be disproportionate and hurt people, hit people where it hurts them. And I'm not necessarily saying by killing people. I'm not necessarily saying by bombing neighborhoods. I just gave a few examples of thinking out of the box ways to deter. Unless you're willing to deter with using a lot of force in a way that hurts people, then the wave of violence would continue. Meaning the opposite. It's not that violence would continue and escalate if you're violent towards the violence. It's that violence would only stop if you're disproportionate. Europeans learned the lesson from World War I. The lesson they learned was violence is bad, and Europe should have learned it's better to use.
Sorry, can you say again the example? I didn't quite understand.
A Israeli professor, which I like a lot, one of my Middle East professors, Dan Shiftan, he once said that Europe learned from World War I that use of violence is bad because many people die, and what they learned is that they had to avoid violence at any price, and after World War I, they learned to appease Hitler because the use of force is a bad thing. So if we use a lot of force, it'll cause more violence. So let's appease. And let's appease Hitler. Let's ignore the fact he's breaking agreements and conquering Sudetenland and all kinds of other things he did. And my professor Dan Shiftan, he says that the lesson they should have learned is the opposite. It's not that the use of force is bad, is that it's better to use little force at an earlier stage than have to use much more force at a later stage. Meaning, because the world was afraid of a Second World War, they caused the World War. It's a paradox, but it's sort of situation. If World War II would have been stopped in 1930, or Hitler would have been fought very strongly in 1937 when he was building up a huge army and stopping agreements, you know, and it would have saved 60 million people's lives maybe. By appeasing him, they made him grow stronger. I would rather fight Hamas when they are strong and weak, rather than when they are weak and have very little rockets, rather than when they have, you know, much more rockets. If Israel, you know, the fear of the use of force is what's letting all these organizations grow stronger, and I fear that Israel is going to have to deal with stronger Hamas and stronger Hezbollah, and I don't know how many more organizations we're going to have to deal with of terrorists. They're going to have more and more rockets because Israel is afraid of confronting them while they're weak. Because of the fear of a wave of violence, you're going to bring a much stronger one.
Okay. Again, my problem with this, and of course I am not an expert, but when I hear it that way, my problem is, okay, I mean, as you said, the deterrent as it is right now is not enough.
No, look, you have to have sticks and carrots.
Yes, okay.
You have to also give carrots. I think Israel gives the Palestinians enough carrots. We let in hundreds of trucks every day into the Gaza Strip. We supply some of the electricity to Gaza Strip. We allow fuel, and we allow all kinds of things. We can allow workers to come into Israel, correct. But carrots can't come without sticks. If you give only carrots and you don't give big, strong sticks to support your agendas or safety needs, then it's going to just cause way more violence, which is what we've been experiencing for the past 15 years.
So
if once and for all, Israel, by the way, Europe also, with its Muslim populations, wherever you're weak towards terrorism, then you'll get more terrorism. Wherever your agendas and your attitudes are more firm, and find a way to deter people from carrying out acts of violence, it won't happen as much. Europe now, unfortunately, I fear, is going to experience a lot more violence. Now, if Europe would find a way to find a terrorist and hurting and stop his motivation of terrorizing or carrying out an act of terrorism by deterrence, yes, people would get hurt. But over a long cycle of time, much less people would get hurt than would get hurt if by not disproportionately attacking. So many more people in the Gaza Strip. I'm talking about Palestinians now. I care for Palestinians, and I have many friends who are Palestinians. I know that many more Palestinians are getting hurt because the wave of violence is always continuing on a low flame, rather than you know, one time just deterring in a proper way. A deterrent, maybe on a short run, more Palestinians would end up getting hurt as a result of this. But I know that for the long run, I would save many Palestinian lives. I'm not even talking about Israel now, I'm talking about Palestinians.
Okay, so the question becomes then, if you frame it like this, when will be the deterrence big enough? And how will you realize it?
Oh, wow. This is a complex answer. I don't mind giving it to you.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry for bringing this up.
I don't mind explaining. Look, the IDF is a lot stronger than terrorist groups. Okay, whether it be Hezbollah up north, or whether it be Hamas in the Gaza Strip, or whether it be different little organizations in the West Bank. The IDF is much stronger. If the IDF wanted to, they can eliminate. They could carpet bomb Gaza and down to the gravel level, and kill all the people there, even if they wanted to, probably within 5 minutes. Okay, I mean the balance of power here is is tremendously huge on one side and is very small and pathetic on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, there's no equivalence here. It's very much not equal. The only problem is that Israel is very strong, but Israel cannot deter the Palestinians. Now, you might ask me, why can't Israel deter? And the answer that Bibi Netanyahu would give you, and I think most Israelis would agree with him, is because of Europe. Meaning, it's not even about us and the Palestinians. If Israel and the Palestinians tomorrow would be in a sandbox alone and would fight, so we'd have rockets fly at us from the West Bank or from the Gaza Strip. We would deter them, and that would be the end of that. And then everything would be peaceful in the Middle East. Okay. The problem is that Israel can't deter. Now, the question you have to ask yourself is, why can't Israel deter? And the reason that Bibi Netanyahu keeps saying in subtext, but he means it very strongly, is because of different European powers. Now, you ask myself, or you might ask yourself, why can't Bibi deter? Why can't Israel deter? What does Europe have anything to do with it? Well, Europe is disproportionately involved in the Middle East. Chancellor Merkel threatened to cancel her trip to Israel a week ago if we clear some little Bedouin illegal encampment, which is about 50 meters away from a highway in Israel, route number 1, like the main road in Israel. And one should ask himself, why does Angelina Merkel even care about a few houses? Or why, when Germany sells submarines to Israel, they put on the contract where we're allowed to build houses, where we're not allowed to build houses. If they would sell the same submarines to Italy, I highly doubt that they would put on a contract where in Milan you're allowed to build houses and we're not. And the question you have to ask yourself is, why is Europe holding Israel back from being able to deter themselves? That's the question you have to ask yourself. I don't mind giving you the answer that Bibi Netanyahu gives, but he clearly states time and again that Europe is what's holding Israel back from its ability to protect itself. And because Europe is holding Israel back, Israel can't deter. And because Israel can't deter, the waves of violence just continue and continue. And many more Palestinians end up getting hurt because more will get hurt on a long, frame of time than on a short one.
Mm-hmm.
You want me to tell you why? I'll tell you why. I don't mind.
Can I tell you at first what my analysis of that situation is?
Sure.
So for me, I think that, and I'm going to give Europe basically the benefit of the doubt, because of course we don't know for sure how it is, and Europe is a big place with different people with different all differences of opinions. But in general, what I think is, Europe sees as a Western part of the world, sees Israel basically also as a Western part of the world, and in a way wants Israel to be on the same level of ethical and moral values and how to deal with certain situations one way or another. I will wait until the sound goes away. Okay. So in a way, so this is how Europe sees Israel. But the problem is that Israel is not in the same situation as Europe is.
What do you mean?
It meaning that Israel is in has since the beginning of the building of Israel has been at, well, not in constant, but in a lot of conflicts, while Europe has been in at least for the last 30 years been without bigger war events. So Europe has has the look on Israel to be a part of the Western world as they see themselves, but doesn't understand the situation in which the Israelis are, and so therefore has a this kind of view. Do you understand what I mean by that?
I understand what you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
and I would question that very strongly and say
Okay.
that just like Europe might have a value or a demand of Israel to be ethical,
Mm-hmm.
I think they would have a demand of themselves to not be unethical by being biased towards Israel. Meaning, why should they have a stronger demand of Israel than they would have of people in Yemen or people in Iraq? That's discriminatory.
Because they don't see them as part of the Western world.
Well, that's discrimination. I don't understand. Just like the
No,
value
it
is to
might
be
be,
ethical, there's a
but
value of not discriminating.
yeah, no, it might it is very much so,
By
but
the way, I would question what you're saying now and ask
okay.
you, then why is it that countries in Western Europe
Mm-hmm.
care about Israel a lot, and countries in Eastern Europe, which might share the same values, maybe they're not rich, maybe their economies are poor,
Mm-hmm.
but share the same Western values, do not care about Israel. Israel will not show up on page 1 or even on page 13 of a newspaper in Eastern European countries, in Poland and Hungary, even though there's higher anti-Semitism levels and the same ethical demands. But Israel concerns diplomats all over Western Europe, in Holland and in Germany and in Italy and in France, very strongly,
Well, it's because
disproportionately more than any other country in the world.
yeah, I get what you're saying, but the situation is that, as I see it, is that the Eastern countries aren't as Western as some people of outside of Europe might think. They are still very um, have still more of the values that they had from before the fall of the Berlin Wall.
I hear what you're saying. I tend to disagree because I don't think that the things I'm saying now are things that Chancellor Merkel
Mm-hmm.
or with Macron
Yeah, of course.
don't see on their own. Meaning, I do think that they would have a problem with the bias against Israel just as much as they would have a problem with Israel as the way they see it being unethical. I think the reason is something else, which I don't mind telling you.
Well, now I want to hear. That's why I basically wanted to give my opinion at first.
It's much more simple than that.
Okay.
Countries that care about Israel in Western Europe
Yeah.
are only the countries, and you can check what I'm saying now empirically,
Mm-hmm.
are only the countries that have a large immigrant Muslim Arab population, and countries that don't care about Israel, even if anti-Semitism levels are higher, even if ethics of the West are higher. I personally think that the fact that Israel is less ethical than they are is not true. And I'm being very gentle with my language. I think that's absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that they are countries are very scared. Countries don't have feelings. Countries have interests, and the fear that the violence here in the Middle East could cause violence. I'm not saying all Muslims are going to be violent. Thank God not. But if even if 1 to 1,000, what happens here in the Middle East can escalate a war or conflict between the Western world and the Arab/Muslim world, well, only countries that have Muslim/Arab populations in them would be affected. And what President Merkel fears is that violence here in the Middle East could affect the streets of Munich and Berlin and Frankfurt. And President Macron sees that violence in the Middle East. He sees violence on the streets from Muslim immigrants as is, and he fears that that violence here in the Middle East, if we and the Palestinians would have, another wave of violence or another wave of attacks between us and the Palestinians, well, that's very relevant for him. That's the reason why they don't care. And you're not going to hear a word from Chancellor Merkel or from Macron about many thousands of people getting killed in Africa, or thousands of 70,000 people dying in the war between Africa and Eritrea. Will get less publicity on a Western newspaper than one or two Palestinians that'll get hurt, or 7 Palestinians getting killed on the road, or a stabbing in Israel. Because if there would be a stabbing in Israel, Israel would have to deter, and the reaction to that might be very, very relevant to these Western countries. I have to continue by saying that I think that Bibi Netanyahu, this is his analysis, because Bibi keeps saying in the UN from 2010 until like 2 weeks ago, and he went to the UN, he says, Israel will not be Czechoslovakia, or Israel will not be Sudetenland of 2012. Meaning, you think you're going to buy quiet by crushing a third, country, crushing their interests, and appeasement. Well, I got news for you. You're going to bring violence. You're going to cause a world war. You're going to cause violence, because inevitably it's going to happen between us and the Palestinians, or between Muslims in Europe and Western European values. It's going to happen. If 70% of Muslim immigrants in the West will say they're in favor of Sharia, so down Sharia law, then down the pike there's going to be serious dilemma and argument within Western European powers. And they have very serious problems. Israel, what they see, could ignite those problems and cause them. And when Bibi says, I'm today's Winston Churchill was a person who, when Neville Chamberlain came back from Munich in September 29th, 1938, and he was convinced, the deepest point in his heart, he was convinced that he had prevented a Second World War by appeasing Hitler and tell them, take over Sudetenland of Czechoslovakia. Everyone gave him a standing ovation when he said, we're going to have peace in our time. And one person, which was a game theorist, which just learned how do you give people incentives to do what you want them to do, sat down and said, you're causing more violence. You're not pushing away the war, you're causing a war. And that person was Winston Churchill. And Bibi Netanyahu went to the UN, and I think it was 2014 or 15 or 16, I don't remember which year it was. And he said, I'm today's Winston Churchill. He's trying to say to people that by appeasement, you're not preventing war and conflict, you're causing war and conflict. That's what, by the way, white countries don't care about Israel if they have no Muslim immigrants. Bosnia doesn't care about Israel a lot, and neither does Hungary, and neither does Poland. But Germany and Italy and France, they care a lot about Israel because it's very relevant to them. By the way, that's why people care about ISIS, for example, because they're relevant to the West. They're attacking the West and targeting Westerners. That's why they're relevant, and that's why they're, you hear about them, while as other organizations, which kill many more people in Syria, are not relevant, so we don't hear about them. I think what I just said now is not just Bibi Netanyahu's opinion. I think it's the majority of Israelis' opinion. If researchers will poll Israel's talkbacks and Israel's comments on news articles, the news articles are very much on the side of are on the right-wing side of, oh, why are we taking 50 rockets and not striking back? We're terrible not to strike back. It's just, it's right, it's very militant, the talkbacks, meaning Bibi Netanyahu is much less militant because Bibi Netanyahu is held back by Europe, which is what's causing more violence on both sides.
Yeah, but the problem is that right now, Israel, with however little the deterrence is, still completely is defeated in the propaganda war, because
100%.
Because
100%.
Israel always looks bad when
100%.
it attacks the territories after attacks. on
A
Israel.
100%. 100%. Look, what we have here is a perfect storm. We have also anti-Semitism, also fear of immigrants, in many cases, and politicians won't say it publicly, but they'll say it off the record all the time. And we have the media, which is very anti-Israel, and we have the Palestinians who are perceived as weak while Israel is very strong. And we have a underdog effect that we love rooting for the underdog. Definitely, definitely. If you ask me, I think Bibi is trying to buy time until violence becomes unbearable in Europe. More people died in terror attacks in Paris the last few years than died in Israel. Many more people died in Germany than died in Israel. And I think that Bibi Netanyahu is trying to buy time until things become very violent in Europe. And then when people in Europe say enough's enough, we have to deter, then Israel will have that opportunity to deter too. I think that Bibi Netanyahu, as much as the people of Israel might want him to deter people doing radical things and stop the motivation of a random terrorist here and there, as much as he feels like deterrence would stop them, he realizes he's caught between the want of the Israeli public to deter and the inability to deter because of Europe. So there's one person stuck in the middle, and that's the president of Israel, the prime minister of Israel, sorry, and I'm not jealous of him.
That brings me still back to the point of what we talked before about the exclusion of of said Muslim population that can get angry because of this. So the problem is, again, the way you framed it. Now it doesn't seem like there is any other way to deal with it. No, I don't even mean that. That you see that the Muslim population just cannot deal with it, even in Europe, in a civilized manner. And the problem is that this kind of rhetoric, well, again, you are losing the propaganda war. You understand?
Right now, we're losing it.
Yeah.
Look. I'm unfortunately in about 5 minutes. I'm going to have to hang up.
All right.
I realize that Israel is losing the propaganda war. For the time being, Israel is losing the propaganda war. But Israel, if I look 20 years down the pike, I think that the right is rising in Europe. Alternative media platforms like Fox News, for example, are on the rise, and people are shifting. The worldview is shifting. Marie Le Pen might have lost now, but right-wing attitudes that fear. Again, I'm God forbid not saying that all Muslims are violent or they have potential.
But the problem, the way you excuse me, I have to address this. The way you address it before kind of makes it very hard to not fear and not hear you bring me like basically that your view is that there's no way of no violence with the Muslim population even in Europe. And
no,
and then
I'm not saying that.
But then but you do say that we have to wait. We are or Bibi is waiting until the things escalate in Europe. So.
Oh, but I'm what you're saying is two different things. You're implying that I said that immigrants are violent or that Muslims are violent. Thank God not. Thank God it's 1 to a zillion.
Okay,
that's right. Violent.
Sure.
But that 1 to a zillion, the word terror means fear, by the way. And it's enough that one person carries out an act of violence that casts fear in many people. Meaning it's enough that there's one event in the Bataclan in Paris, and suddenly people will fear in every concert hall. It's enough that one person takes a truck and drives it into people in these, and now people will fear all truck drivers, which is a lot of times what these people are trying to achieve. So yes, countries that have a lot of people, a lot of immigrants or Muslims, they are succeeding in their agenda. You could ask yourself, how do you address the violence? And if you look at it in I try telling you what I think that Bibi Netanyahu sees the right way, and the European right sees the right way of addressing violence is with much more violence to deter, so that I don't have to live in fear. Mm-hmm. But I'm not at all saying that all Muslims are violent. Just like Palestinians, 90% of them, if not 99.999% of them, live a very peaceful life. Go and work in Israel every single day, get salaries, and then work in the shops. And I fix my car by Palestinians because it's cheaper. Mm-hmm. And I work with Israeli Arab bus drivers because it's cheaper, and they love working with me, and I love working with them, and everything is okay. I always have a fear, and that fear drives me or other people, to do other things. So terrorism is very successful in casting fear, and because we feel a collective us and a collective, they, which are at conflict with each other. By the way, once we can lower the violence in the Middle East and in Israel and in Europe too, when it happens, by deterrence, then that would open up the session for cooperation and friendship much more than the fear we feel today. Meaning, cooperation it will be obtainable a lot more once people feel they don't feel scared, rather than when people feel open, a friendly, cooperative feeling, rather than a feeling of fear of the violence. Something violent might happen. I'm afraid I'll have to take your last question now, because I'm going to have to hang up in 5 minutes.
That's all right. That's all right. I basically wanted to get from this point to, basically, okay, let's say you're right and something awful happens, and then a few more awful things happen, and basically a hot war starts between Israel and the Palestinian territories. So Israel defeats the enemy, however it is framed. What comes after that?
Israel won't. Oh well. Once Israel deters, the question you're looking at is a more qualitative thing, and it's not the approach I think that Israeli politics, realpolitik, looks at it. They look at it as a quantitative problem. There is violence occasionally. It happens in Israel. There's an act of violence once every 3 days, or once a week, or once every 2 days. There is, and the question is, if we deter them, and I can bring the violence down from once every, let's say, 2 days to once every, let's say, 2 months, then I have a variety of things I can do. Meaning, I have it opens up so many options. Israel, for example, with the West Bank, Israel could annex the West Bank tomorrow if we're not afraid of the population being radical or being violent, or Israel can leave the West Bank, which are two negative approaches, which are only there once there's deterrence, meaning a whole tool chest of options opens up. We can annex certain parts of it. We can annex the whole thing and live municipally separate, meaning Israeli settlements will live under Israeli rule and Arabs will live under Arab rule. A variety of things opens up, meaning right now we don't have a variety because we don't have deterrence. But we have violence, so Israel can't, Israel has to be there militarily in certain places. Once there is a deterrent, Israel's military can leave. Israel could end different things, different places, meaning paradoxically, the only thing that can stop and open up and even make things more helpful for Palestinians is if the violence goes down. and is if Israel deters, then their economy could boom, and Gaza is a great example. Right now, we have a blockade, and everything going into Gaza has to pass through Israel. If tomorrow people in Gaza are afraid of bombing Israel because Israel might deter them, that's the day I can build a port and an airport and a free, and I can open the blockade of the Gaza Strip. Meaning, if I'm not afraid of them attacking me, I can let everything in without restricting fertilizers and without restricting metal and without restricting all kinds of things which right now risk my life. If I'm not afraid of them carrying out acts of violence, so the Palestinian, Gaza, as Shimon Peres once said, could become the Singapore of the Middle East. Development can rise, and factories and their life can become a million times better. Meaning, the only thing keeping them away from success is the fear of deterrent. Once you take down deterrence and take down levels of violence, then I can think of a million ways to take a society which right now has, I don't know, 40 or 60% in Gaza of unemployment, and I can give everybody jobs and open the borders and give them agriculture and ports, even let them work in Israel if they want to and get higher salaries. Everything would be great. Meaning, potentially everything could be great. All we need is deterrent. Anyways, I'm gonna have to hang up now.
All right. Well, still,
I
thank you very much.
I hope this chat was helpful.
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
I hope you have a lot of listeners. I'll just mention one more thing.
Yes.
I'm putting up a series of videos on the internet.
I will link everything.
YouTube.
Yeah, I will link everything to this.
And people can comment and ask random questions if they want to on either on Facebook or on the remarks on the comments on the videos on YouTube. And sure. It's very easy. My name is Eytan Rund, and people can watch the videos if they want to. And if they have questions, I'll be delightful. And when I have a chance, I'll shoot up little videos and post them.
All right. I will post your information under my video. And yeah, thank you very much for talking to me. I tried to give you tough enough questions, but you answered them eloquently. So thanks for the good conversation.
May we live in a much more peaceful world in a few generations from now, rather than living today the way we have violence happening here and there. And hopefully the future will be a better future than the present, and we'll go uphill, not downhill.
Yeah, let's go uphill. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Have a good night.
Okay, have a good night. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.